Excellent. Welcome tonight. We're really glad to have you here. This is a public hearing for the City of Port Coquitlam on rezoning some land. You know, at council, we're always trying to get people out to talk about the city and talk about what's going on, so we thought we would take advantage of this opportunity. We just have the short 32-slide PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll get to these guys. No. But in all seriousness, thank you for coming out tonight for this important discussion, debate about the future of our country and what it means here locally. So a couple weeks ago, council called on all federal leaders to have a debate on the federal stage about local government issues. And at the same time, we thought, why not do a debate here about local issues related to the federal election? And we're really glad that the 5 candidates all agreed to come out tonight and have a good discussion about some of these local issues on a federal stage and some of these national issues that affect us locally. So I do want to recognize some of our team here from council tonight. We have Councillor Glenn Pollock, Councillor Dean Washington, Councillor Michael Forrest, Councillor Darrell Penner. I think I saw Councillor Laura DuPont here. Oh, she's up there in the cheap seat. And I also want to recognize Michael Thompson, our school board trustee. Thank you for coming out tonight. Also up there is Chris Wilson, a city councillor from Coquitlam, who's also joined us. Thanks for coming out. So let's get on with it. We wanted to make sure that this was impartial, so we wanted to ensure that it wasn't us asking the questions, so that there was no political bias in this. So we asked Kevin Lim, who's born and bred, it says born and bred here, that sounds like a horse, right? Born and raised here. Kevin is, you might know him better as Kevin and Sonia in the morning on Peak FM, and you'll probably go, ah, right. And so anyways, Kevin went to Riverside High School, now is raising his family here in Port Coquitlam. So we're really pleased to have Kevin here tonight to MC this event and walk us through it. And Kevin Lim, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor Moore, and thank you all for showing up here tonight. It's a Tuesday night. Thank you for coming to this very special timeshare presentation, where we will now lock the doors, and nobody will leave until we sell 7 houses in Citadel Heights, okay? So, we do, of course, know that this is the longest campaign trail in Canadian history, but October 19th is fast approaching, so we do really want to show our appreciation to you for showing up with the interest to vote and also the interest to be informed when you vote and head to the polls as well. To know and meet the candidates here tonight, the people who will be taking your voice and bringing it to Parliament on behalf of you. So I'm looking through this through 2 lenses. One as moderator tonight, and 2, as Mayor Moore had mentioned, as a resident of Port Coquitlam. I went to Mary Hill Elementary, Pitt River Middle, then Riverside Secondary. I've got some friends from high school here. My parents are here as well. We still live here in Port Coquitlam. So much like you, very interested in seeing what the candidates have to say here tonight. Now, a couple housekeeping things to keep in mind for tonight. If you have any cell phones, please put that onto silent if you don't mind. If you get thirsty, there is a water fountain just right outside the doors over there, as are the bathrooms. And let's go through the rules of the game here tonight. You may have seen maybe you caught it last night, televised debates. We're going to take a very similar format to this here. So each candidate will be allowed 90 seconds for an opening remark statement. 1 minute to respond to each of the questions that we pose here tonight. And then 2 minutes for closing remarks at the end. There will be a chance to perhaps do some open discussion after each question with all the candidates, once each has had a chance to speak, time allowed. So, we mentioned time. That's a very important thing here tonight, because we're going to try to get through as many questions as possible. There's a lot of topics that we know are on top of your minds. So with that, we've got our good friend, Wendy. Wendy, can you please just wave your hand there for a second? Stand up. Yes, Wendy's right. Everybody say hi, Wendy. So Wendy works for the city, and she has the dubious honor of being the timekeeper here tonight. So in her hand, she has a yellow card, which means 15 seconds to shut up. Okay? The red card, right there, means your time is up. Now, are you familiar with award shows? What happens when you run out of time? What do? Right? They start to play you off with some gentle music to say it's time to wrap it up. Tonight, we're not doing that. Tonight, if you run out of time, you get bussed. So, I will specify the order in which the candidates will speak. After the first candidate has spoken, the order of which the remaining candidates will be chosen at random. After all the candidates have had a chance to answer the question, we're going to go back to the first candidate, who will then open discussion. If at any point during the open discussion, candidates feel like they want to interject and interact with each other, they are welcome to do that here tonight. And as always, with debates, the person who shouts loudest is the winner. So I'll be honest with you, in my career in radio, I've done a lot of different things. I've done awards and galas and fashion shows and concerts. I've never really done a political event like tonight. So tonight's a bit of a first for me. So I'm gonna take a little bit of that world that I know and bring it into tonight's atmosphere, if you don't mind. I've been asked by the mayor to try to make this a little bit more relaxed, a bit more informal from what you're used to seeing at a televised debate. So with that, I thought we would try to introduce the candidates here in a bit of more of a fun way than maybe what you've seen on television. So, if we could dim the lights just a tiny bit. Perfect. Cue the music. Please welcome to the stage, representing the Conservative Party of Coquitlam-Port. Feel free to high-five people on the way down, say hello to your constituents.
Representing the Liberal Party of Canada, he is Ron McKinnon!
As you can tell, he's very excited to be here tonight. Welcome. Representing the Green Party of Canada, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Brad Nickerson! A slight drive to the stage, time conscious. Welcome. Oh, good. Representing the new Democratic Party of Canada, she is Sarah Norman! Finally, last but not least, representing the Libertarian Party, he's already started walking down, Lewis Clark Colby! Welcome. Oh boy, that was fun. I don't know why they don't do that on television more. It's a bit more relaxed. And you know, watching some of the televised debates in the last couple of weeks, I was reminded that despite the attack ads I meet here on the radio or see on the television and see in print, and despite the very heated and animated debates that you may see, everybody here is here for one reason. Welcome back. It is hot. And we're here for one reason, and that reason is to make Canada an even better country than it already is. So united with this common goal, I thought, you know, we should try to break down the barriers of different parties, and tonight start with something that has never been done before at a political debate. And that is something that you two in the audience can participate in. So I invite everybody to please stand up. And remember that in the name of trying to make this country a better place, forget about political lines for just a moment. Turn to the person to your left and give them a hug. Go ahead. And now turn to the right and give them a hug as well. Look at the love on stage. Look at the love. We've got NDP and Liberals and Conservatives and everybody's hugging. It's just amazing. This is good. I love this. All right. You may be seated. Thank you. And look at that, we have no more time for debate. So thank you for coming out here tonight. All right, so let us begin with the opening remarks. Again, we have 90 seconds on the clock for each of the candidates. We will start with Lewis Dalby.
Okay, thank you to the city of Port Coquitlam and Braden and yourself, Kim, for everything. So anyway, I'm Louis Dalby, age 61. I've lived in Port Coquitlam since 2001 and in the riding for 30 years. I run a small business. I'm married with 2 daughters. Anyway, I'm with the Libertarian Party, so we're all about individual freedom. Am I too close, or? It doesn't sound right. Anyway, so we're the party for smaller government, lower taxes, a maximum of individual freedom. Maybe that's not too popular. It seems like governments are growing ever bigger. Taxes are going higher, but taxes still aren't that popular, so governments have a tendency to borrow money. And so I'm the only one I think on this stage that's trying to reverse this trend of bigger government. Maybe Doug might disagree, but the Conservatives, they've actually increased the federal budget from $220 billion to $280 billion during their time, so they haven't really downsized government. And so I want to talk about my plan is to try and educate people on what liberty actually means, and also the problems with democracy. There's quite a difference. A lot of people think freedom and democracy go together, but maybe I'll get a chance later to explain why democracy isn't this wonderful thing we always think about.
Thank you, Louis. Your time is up.
Oh yeah, I gotta watch for the girl down.
Okay, so Wendy's the holder of the cards tonight to keep your, I mean, as much as I'd like to do this. Oh, that's a good one.
I think that's better.
That's a good one. Maybe we'll do this. It's a little bit less abrasive. All right. As our next candidate will welcome his opening remarks, it's Douglas Horn.
Great. Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you to the mayor and council of Port Coquitlam to arrange this wonderful crowd tonight. You know, I think that it's great that we can all come together and really explore the ideas that each of the candidates have to offer. I have to start, however, by saying that James Moore, who's been our Member of Parliament for the past 15 years, I think we owe him a debt of gratitude. He's represented our area with distinction. He's done a very good job to ensure that we have a very strong voice in Ottawa. And I think that James will be definitely missed. And so I think that it's important that we recognize that this area has been represented so well in Ottawa and has had such a strong voice. I've been the MLA for Coquitlam-Port for the last 6 years and represented the northern half of the riding in the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia. I've been the Deputy Speaker, I've been on the Treasury Board, I've been the Chair of the Finance Committee. I think that one of the things that I see as key and important is being less partisan. One of the things as Chair of the Finance Committee that I did was to have the first in the history of what the clerks remember, complete, nonpartisan, and unanimous report of the Finance Committee. I think listening to British Columbia's and really listening to what they have to say and reporting that is really important, and that's why I hope that I can count on your support in the next election.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Our next candidate we'd like to introduce you to tonight, with 90 seconds on the clock, is Ron McKinnon.
I'd like also to thank the City Council for putting on this event and for paying for it. It's particularly important for us because the theme of this event, which I understand is municipal funding, and that's a very key part of our platform. My wife and I have been a part of this community for more than half my adult life. That's a long time. We raised our children here. We care deeply about our community. It's home to us just as it is home to you. We're a middle-class community, and federal Liberals' core values are support for the middle class. And I hope to be able to tell you through the night that some of our policies that will in fact underscore that theme. We have, in particular, we are making the largest investment in infrastructure in Canada's history, according to party literature, which I'm sure is true. In any case, it's a lot of money. It's a $60 billion over the next 10 years for $20 million for infrastructure for transport, 20 million for social infrastructure, and another 20 billion for green infrastructure. So I hope to be able to tell you more about this as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Next up is Brad Nickerson.
I am Brad Nickerson, and I'm representing the Green Party here tonight. I too would like to thank the council and the city, but most of all, I'd like to thank the people who are showing up to something like this and showing how important this particular election is. It's thrilling to see this, and I hope that it continues on. I'm a resident of this community for the past 26 years. My wife and I were married in Burnaby. We quickly moved to here and brought up our 3 kids here. I think that I am probably one of the most, I've left probably one of the most visible marks on our community here in Port Coquitlam, because I'm the fellow who has designed the logo of our city. And in that process, I've had a lot to do with the arts and councils here. I've also been somebody who has coached a lot of kids. I am in love with our community, and over the years that I've been here, I've also done something else. I've designed kids' books that teach social issues to our kids. I love this community, and I've seen it shrink over the years, and I've seen us lose some of the services and things we have. And I want to go to Ottawa and be a representative to bring money back to our community so that we can have a good, great community again.
Thank you, Brad. And last but not least, Sarah Norman.
So of course, my name is Sarah Norman. I am your NDP candidate, and thank you all for coming tonight. For over 7 years, I held the Harper government to account through my work as a journalist. I made sure to bring community concerns to the forefront, and it was my work that exposed the cruel and insensitive comments on child poverty made by our former Conservative MP, James Moore. That kind of attitude to families in this community is why I stepped forward to run in this election. We have to get our economy working for every one of the constituents in this riding. That starts with policies the NDP have developed that will really help families and small businesses in our riding. Policies like $15 a day childcare, lowering small business tax, and making sure more of the tax each one of us pays comes back to our city through infrastructure and transit upgrades. Tom Mulcair and the NDP have a plan to make sure the federal government becomes a strong partner with municipalities. Here in Port Coquitlam, we need a government that doesn't hand down responsibility for things like transit, local safety, affordable housing, and of course, jobs. We need a government that will come to the table with solutions like the policies the NDP are offering. If I'm elected as your MP, I will work to make sure we all have a prosperous future right here at home.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify, it's Sarah.
It is our
Sorry. My apologies for mispronouncing your name. So, the opening remarks are now said, and once again, a big round of applause for all of the candidates here tonight. These are your participants in this year's edition of the Hunger Games. So there's, the candidates have all received the themes of the questions here tonight, but they don't actually have the questions in advance. So they're about to hear these for the first time as well, but they will be touching on some of the topics that matter a lot to you, things like transportation and safety and infrastructure and the environment. And I think we all have that one particular topic that resonates the most with us, that says, okay, that's the person I want to vote for because that's the topic I care about and that's the right answer. For me, I have one question as we begin this debate here, and this will help me decide who will get my vote on October 19th, and that is who can help me get out of this parking ticket the fastest. Is that not in jurisdiction? All right, so we are beginning the debate here. First question, the topic is infrastructure, and the organization that has put this through is the City of Coquitlam. Municipalities receive 8% of all of the taxes collected, however, deliver 68% of the infrastructure. The funding of infrastructure projects for municipalities has differed between administrations. If elected, how would you advocate for infrastructure projects in our communities? And what is your position on the gas tax and the Build Canada funds? First question, again, infrastructure, and we're going to start with Louis Dalby.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with the gas tax. Philosophically, it's consistent with libertarian philosophy to have a pollution tax, because in theory, if you're emitting exhaust pollution, you're infringing on the rights of others. So a gasoline tax takes care of that, which we already have, by the way. And I think it's probably good enough the way it is. And the other one was the infrastructure.
And the Build Canada funds.
Yeah, the Build Canada funds, I'm not familiar with that. What, the infrastructure for the city, are you talking about waters or roads?
How would you advocate?
How would I advocate? Well, you see, with libertarians, we're the minimal government people. So I think it's, the problem is when the federal government taxes us heavily, we send our money to Ottawa, and then we have to beg to get some of our money back. And in the process, a lot of it is lost. A lot of it goes to Quebec, by the way. And so we end up with less than what we could have had we just left it here. And the local, okay, I guess I'm finished. You better start using this buzzer here.
Well, you're self-censoring though. This is good. I appreciate that. All right. The next person who will speak on this topic is Sarah Norman.
All right, so several years ago when I was a reporter, Richard Stewart came forward to us and told us that a sewage pipe had broken in Coquitlam and it had leaked into, I believe it was a fish-bearing stream. And he came forward and he said, government needs to help with infrastructure. The NDP has a really strong plan for that, and that's taking more of the money you pay at the gas pump and putting it back into the communities through infrastructure upgrades. It's really very important.
All right. You have time to tell a joke if you like before I buzz you? Okay, good. Douglas Horn, let's hear from you.
Great. Well, I think this is one of the most important things that face communities and face levels of government. And one of the things I tried very hard when I was a MLA was to stop, and I think people are tired of different levels of government pointing to other levels of government and basically saying, well, it's their fault that this hasn't happened. I think what we really need to do is we need to work together with the different levels of government to make certain that it's not anyone's fault, but that it actually gets accomplished and actually gets done. As you talked about the Building Canada Fund, basically the Building Canada Fund will deliver $14 billion a year for infrastructure in Canada over the next 10 years. That's $1 billion a year because of some of the population clauses in it for British Columbia. And one of the things that we had during James Moore's term is that basically the Tri-Cities saw significant dollars from the infrastructure funds. We received the Evergreen line that we built, the Broadway corridor, but many other projects. And I think it's very, very important for levels of government to continue to work together to make sure that infrastructure continues to be upgraded in our local area.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Let's hear from Ron McKinnon now.
Well, I'm going to say that our infrastructure plan is better than their infrastructure plan. How about now? So we have $60 billion in extra infrastructure investment beyond what is currently committed by the federal government. 20 billion of that for public transit, 20 billion of that for green infrastructure, and 20 billion of that for social infrastructure. So that includes, these are funds that will be made available across Canada, working with provinces and working with municipalities on a collaborative basis. We will work in partnership with these various levels of government to determine where the money will be allocated and how much will accrue in each case. So transit infrastructure, of course, is things like, transportation infrastructure, things like roads, bridges, transit. Social infrastructure, things like social housing, affordable housing, and more.
Etc. All right, thank you very much. And finally, to speak on this topic of infrastructure is Brad Nicholson.
From the perspective of, can you hear that? Can you hear that? I'm trying to find it. From the perspective of infrastructure, the Green Party proposes that it will take 1 point of the GST and it will put about $6.4 billion a year to infrastructure for the communities. That's targeted directly towards communities. And it also suggests that we create, or plans that we create, a Canada Infrastructure Bank that will fund, help communities fund their infrastructure projects in such a way that's quite a bit more innovative and keeps interest rates low for communities.
All right, thank you very much, Brad. So once again, once we are done the questions, we're going to throw it back to the person who we started with, and they will open with the open discussion. So would you like to start, Lewis?
Okay, well, I think the reality is that none of us up here, even the person that gets elected, they're not really going to be able to do very much to influence whether we get infrastructure money or anything like that. And even if they are a member of the governing party, it's like we send more money back east than we get back. So we'd be better off to have a minimal federal government and then let the city have more. They could tax higher and they'd end up with more revenue at the local level, and they could make the decisions rather than have the federal government, you know, we have to go cap in hand to them.
Responses? Feel free to jump in.
With all due respect, the local area saw 3 times more infrastructure spending when James Moore was the member from this area in the last 6 years than we did in the 12 years of the Liberal government before that. So who represents this area is actually very, very important. You know, it's making certain that we have a strong voice, that we have someone who can advocate for us, someone who can understand, you know, the issues, someone who understands finance. These are very, very important things to make certain that this area ensures that we continue to get the funding that we need. Funding for important projects like the Fremont Connector, which is a major issue right now between the city of Port Coquitlam and the city of Coquitlam, something that really is going to, you know, play to the lifestyles both of people that currently live in Port Coquitlam, but also many of the new residents in Burke Mountain. You know, it's these types of issues that we need to work together on. It's these types of issues that we need to make certain that we do have a strong voice, and it's these types of issues that will really influence our neighborhoods and our communities as we move forward. And this is why it's important that we have a strong voice in Ottawa.
You know, something that concerns me about that is, something that I've really noticed is every time as a regular person I try to cross the 2 bridges into the other side of the valley, we have to pay for that. That's what the strong voice has done for us in this last, how many years? Thank you. I think what we need to do is have people who understand the needs of the people, not only in our community is very important, but we need to look at other communities, because not every community out there is a conservative community. There are NDP communities, there are liberal communities, and they need to be funded as well. And especially this idea of having to pay a backhanded tax so that when to pay for our bridges, I think that that's a mistaken, responsible type of view towards finances for infrastructure.
And just to sort of piggyback on that, the NDP plan would actually do direct transfers to municipalities. So, you know, it wouldn't be based on an NDP or a conservative riding, it would be for municipalities to use as they see fit.
Well, I think considering the current funds are based upon whether it's an NDP or a conservative riding is ridiculous. You know, basically, there's many dollars that are spent across the province in ridings held by every one of the parties. So, you know, the way that the provincial government and the federal government work together on deciding where these projects go, you know, if you take a look at the current funds that have been set out, you know, the number of opposition-held ridings in British Columbia that got significant funding for projects is immense. You know, you look at the Kicking Horse Canyon Pass, that's in the middle of a NDP riding, and it was built. So to say that, you know, it's about NDP and conservative ridings is just not true. And the other difficulty that we face is that, you know, basically I think it's important that we work together. You know, I worked very closely with Mike Farnworth, our local MLA here. I would consider Mike Farnworth a personal friend. I wouldn't agree with him on everything that we say, but, you know, Mike and I work very, very closely together. Mike and I laid the wreath to Remembrance Day each year, because I think that partisan politics needs to be set aside for those types of occasions. But, you know, This is the important thing. It's about working together. It's working for our community and making certain that we have the projects that we need. And quite frankly, time is money. And yes, we do pay a toll on the two bridges, but the fact of the matter is traffic flows much, much faster than it ever did before. And I had one person who was with the school board who lives in Surrey and commented that he had an extra hour in his day because of the Portman Bridge. So it's these things that really make our lives much better as we move forward.
Thank you for your comments on the infrastructure. For those of you who are wondering, we have a time limit of 4 minutes for open discussion. And again, that time might be flexible as we're trying to get through as many questions as possible. Question number 2 is about the environment, and this has been set forth through by the city of Port Coquitlam. We as citizens, we value the environment. So our questions to you is, if elected to serve our community in Ottawa, what will you do to advocate as our member of parliament to protect and enhance our environment? More specifically, what will your government do to help the Tri-Cities mitigate the effects of climate change? Douglas Horn, we'll start with you.
Sure, I think there's two sides to this question. One has to do with some of the events that we've seen, like the current windstorm, which costs cities considerable amounts of money to clean up and really is an issue. The other side is in larger environmental projects and how we deal with those. In the last election, I sat in front of a group of students at Glen Eagle School and basically said to them, if you play football or soccer or volleyball, and the referee came on the court at the beginning of the game and said, I've decided that this team's going to win and this team's going to lose, and I'm going to change the rules throughout the entire game to make certain that happens. I said, how many of the kids would actually like to play the game? Of course, none of them would. Now, this is the thing that we have to remember. Governments are here to make stringent and very, very, good environmental regulations to ensure that we protect our environment for future generations. I care deeply about the environment, and we need to make certain that we do that, but we basically make it clear to business how that they can move forward as well.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Brad, let's hear your thoughts.
I'm a little shocked by some of what I heard. Again, harkening back to the infrastructure fund, we think that what we could do is work with communities to use the infrastructure bank and that part of that $6.4 billion a year to put into their environmental concerns. I think what we could do is work as a community to be one of those communities in the world, and there are communities who are going completely sustainable energy communities. And so working with funds like or with our $6.4 billion a year, I think that we, as visionaries, could move in that direction.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate your thoughts on that. Ron McKinnon, let's hear your thoughts.
Well, I think the Conservative record on the environment is not very credible. They've gutted environmental regulations, water protection regulations across the country in favor of supporting oil, which has turned us into somewhat of a petrostate. And as the price of oil has gone down, that has caused consequent declines in our economy. I think that the $6 billion towards a fund for environment is a good plan. It's just not enough. I would go back to our own $20 billion of infrastructure for that green infrastructure over the next 10 years that would be allocated in concert with the communities, with the provinces, to determine the best place in each case to put it. This would be things for such things as improving the energy, sustainable energy, and no more red lights.
Thank you, Ron. Sarah, how does your party feel about this?
Well, first of all, we just came out of a drought this summer that was probably the worst most of us have seen in our entire lifetime. So the NDP feels that we need to come to the table and be a partner with the province and municipalities and have a national water strategy and mitigate the effects of climate change and work on that together. So that's the first thing. 2, we have a federal government who doesn't attend climate summits in our own country. So we have a lot of damage to undo. I mean, Tom Mulcair has been an environment minister. He's dealt with climate change, doesn't deny it, he deals with it. He's lowered emissions, and we have a really good plan that's going to move forward on that and really help out our environment.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris Dahl.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Sarah brought up this climate change thing, and I just wanted to mention, I think this whole climate change thing is it's a lot of silly nonsense. You know, about 35 years ago, the scientists were saying we were going into a global cooling era. And then once they realized that wasn't happening, they said, oh no, we're going to global warming. That was like 25 years ago, they said global warming is upon us. And then they realized that wasn't happening, so they said, oh, it's climate change. Well, that covers all the bases, or there's wind storms or whatever. And this is good because there's a lot of ignorant people here. The younger people in the crowd, they'll live to see that it's all a bunch of silly nonsense. You know, all of Canada was covered in snow and ice for 20,000 years. It's been melting for the last 20,000 years. It had nothing to do with humans.
I feel like I'm watching Jerry Springer sometimes. All right, let's open up the floor, starting with Douglas Horn. Please speak on the environment and your plans.
Well, you know, I think the environment is a very important issue for us, not only today, but in the future. You know, I worked in Ottawa many years ago for John Fraser, who was probably one of the top environmental, stewards for British Columbia for many, many years. He's been very involved with the BC Salmon Commission, Pacific Salmon Commission, and he was Canada's ambassador to the United Nations on the environment. I have worked very, very hard on environmental issues for very many years. That being said, I think it's very, very important that we put very stringent guidelines in place so that businesses can understand what the playing field looks like, so that business can understand what it is that we will agree to and what it is that we won't, and that we make very, very tough rules, and that we live by those. And that basically by protecting the environment, making it sustainable, but also making it possible for projects to move forward, we have both economic prosperity and we have the protection of our environment for the future.
So Doug, how do you expect to do that when the Conservative government has muzzled scientists or fired scientists? How do we even know what's actually happening with our environment when we've gotten rid of all of the cornerstones that will tell us exactly what that is, gutted the programs that could help us figure out what that is?
That's just not true, Sarah.
Yes, it is. What's the matter with you?
4,000 peer-reviewed papers from the government. 4,000. So I'm not certain how, if you issue 4,000 peer-reviewed papers, you're muzzling your government officials.
Well,
I know
the
it
thing is,
sounds
you
good,
also
but
cleared out
difficulty is
the Department of Fisheries and Ocean Libraries as well. So we don't really know what our history is anymore because we can't access those documents dating back to the 1800s.
Tough laws.
We'll just get you to speak closer into the mic there, Ron.
I can't actually get that. You speak of strong rules and tough laws, and it sounds like the Green Party are talking. This is what we actually do need, but it doesn't sound like the Conservative Party. I think you've joined the wrong party.
He has not joined the wrong party.
You know, if we have no environmental regulation, one of the questions I have to ask is how did the prosperity mine fail? The application failed not once, but twice the environmental process, and that was because of the tailings pond. We have the Northern Gateway pipeline that has 200 conditions attached to its application. It's these types of things that we basically say we are not going to imperil our environment at the cost of business. But that being said, we are still going to have jobs and we're still going to build prosperity. One of the things that really, really sticks in my mind is sitting in the Legislative Assembly in July and watching the NDP caucus stand up and gleefully vote against jobs, vote against prosperity, and vote against things. It's the same party.
Doug,
It's exactly the same party.
I thought you quit federal or provincial politics to run federally.
It's the same party, Sarah. You're the same party. And it's all the same people. You know, basically,
He's making an interesting point. Does that mean if they're the same party and you've come from the Liberals to the Conservatives, they're the same party as well?
most people know that the BC Liberal Party is a coalition between federal Liberals and federal Conservatives. I've always been a federal Conservative. There's no question to that.
Okay, well, with that, we will wrap up the discussion about the environment. I have received a text from one of the organizers for tonight's event asking you to please respect the debate, and as much as it is on the top of your mind to try to yell out some of your opinions, to please try to let these 5 candidates have a chance to speak. It is a two-way street if you're chatting with them in person, from what I'm told. This is a debate that is free to watch. That came across really mean, didn't it? Sorry. You can clap, you can cheer, but please don't shout out anything. It's like TV. Something I'll throw in just real quick here. I was just, I don't know if you heard this story, but Justin Trudeau was issuing a challenge at the Grouse Grind a couple weeks ago. And he challenged all the other leaders to beat his time of under an hour. Are any of you 5 willing to take the Coquitlam Crunch challenge? And set a new record.
I actually did it a few weeks ago 4 times, 3.5 times, so yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah? The challenge is out. Let's take it back to the debate with question number 4. Parks and recreation is the topic, and this has been set forth from the City of Coquitlam. Now, funding for major municipal parks and recreation projects has traditionally come from the General Infrastructure Program, and there's that word again. Now, if elected, how would you work to ensure communities have adequate access to funding for parks and recreation projects? For that, we will start with Brad.
One of the things that I really like to see is arts programs included in parks and recreation. I think that that's sadly missed in our community, and we're missing a lot of the culture that comes from the arts community. Again, I'm going to go back to an infrastructure fund. That I think that's the strong way for us to support our arts and our parks and recreation. It's important to our communities that we have that. So we need to go to our federal government, and we need to have them. And I'm sorry to our libertarian friend, but we do, as our communities grow and get bigger, we need to expand our government in such a way, not huge, but in such a way that it can reflect and support the infrastructure needs like parks and recreation.
Thank you, Brad. Ron McKinnon, the floor is yours.
Like Brad, I will go back to our infrastructure plan. $20 billion in green infrastructure over 10 years. Also $20 billion in social infrastructure, so whether the city, in a particular case, would consider parks and recreation, depending on maybe if it's more recreation or parks, whatever, as social infrastructure, they might want to apply as under the social infrastructures plan instead. These funds are available, will be available with the Liberal government to the municipalities and the provinces, and it will be up to the provinces and the municipalities themselves to decide where the priorities are in allocating these funds. I should also point out that these funds do not lapse. You may be familiar with some governments who put red tape and dither around allocating funds so that at the end of the year they can say, well, hey, we balanced the budget, but we didn't actually spend the money.
Thank you, Ron. Sorry.
So I've been talking to a lot of parents in this community, and a lot of their children play hockey. And we have very few rinks for the amount of people who play hockey. So they're struggling because they don't, their kids are getting up before 6 o'clock, and they're having to play games, Pee Wee hockey games. These are like 9 or 10-year-olds. And they're playing their games at 11 o'clock. So obviously the government has to come to the table with more infrastructure spending, which of course the NDP is willing to do. We're going to take 1 cent of the gas tax you're already paying and put it back into municipalities.
Thank you, Sarah. Lewis.
Yeah, okay. The parks, you know, it's really kind of a localized issue. I don't believe that the federal government should have much say in planning parks and recreation. And when you subsidize one sport or one recreation over another one, you're being selective and discriminatory. So it's not really right. What if a person doesn't like to play hockey or, you know, like something else? Well, you're taking money without his consent and using it for something else. Maybe he'd prefer to use that money and keep it in his pocket or use it for something else. So, and you know, I don't mind if people yell at me or laugh. And so I'm just happy that Donald Trump's not making fun of me up there.
Thank you, Lewis. Douglas Horn.
Thank you. You know, to Sarah's point, obviously, I think marinas and those types of things are very important to our local community. They really do build communities, and that's why the Conservative government funded Port Moody's new arena. We also funded the expansion of the Hyde Creek Recreational Center for almost $900,000. We replaced the roof and did a number of upgrades to the Percy Norman Stadium in Coquitlam. We also supported Golden Spike Days, the May Day Festival, and Port Moody Centennial, as well as Port Coquitlam Centennial. And I think that it's very, very important that we have these types of things, these celebrations, these facilities that people in the community can use, and that basically we all work together to make sure that we do have those recreational and arts facilities that are so important.
Thank you, Douglas. Let's open up the floor right now, and once again, Brad, you can start the open discussion.
Can I pass on that?
Sure. Anyone else like to step forward and speak on that? Ron, you had your hand up first.
Sure. I just wish I had a big bag of money that I could use to try and buy votes with. I think it's a proper role for the federal government to contribute along with the provinces to help the municipalities share the load that senior governments are asking them to bear, but we shouldn't link them too closely to our political affiliations. They should be, as Sarah pointed out, they should be pretty well across the board, irrespective of which party happens to hold the riding. And we have seen a correlation between money that has gone to conservative held ridings and non-conservative held ridings, much higher in conservative held ridings. So I think we have to be careful of that we allocate our largesse in a fair and equal manner.
I just wanted to mention that, like all these candidates, they want to hand out goodies and, you know, spend lots of money. We all want free stuff, but you got to realize that the government has no money of its own. The only money they get is from us, and so just keep that in mind. Right now, the federal debt is approaching $700 billion, and with the unfunded liabilities, I think it's $2.9 billion. And so we're kind of on the way, the road that Greece has taken. It's a real disaster there now. And the baby boomers, of which I am one, we're getting older, we're going to retire, we want our pensions, we're going to use more health care. There's more people over the age of 65 now than there is under age 15. So the future doesn't look too good, and we're racking up debt like crazy. So I'm just trying to reverse the trend so we don't end up like Greece.
I would agree with Lewis to a certain extent. You know, one of the things that Ron just accused us of was going around and spending a bunch of money, and yet their entire platform is based upon running up huge deficits over the next number of years, not living within our means, and basically spending that we don't have. You know, all of the infrastructure programs that I've mentioned today, we did with the lowest taxes in Canadian history. We did in a situation where we have, you know, a very balanced budget this year and next year as well. And this is what we need to do. We need to balance our budget. We need to live within our means. We're living in a very, very difficult economic climate. You know, spending money and running up huge deficits is just not prudent and not practical. You know, and the other difficulty with the NDP is they've made all of these spending promises as well, but, you know, we're not certain where $8 billion is coming from. So,
You know what? Percy Norman is actually my uncle. And I think he would agree with me in saying that we need more local arenas for our kids to play in. We have people moving into our riding at alarming rates because, you know, Burke Mountain is expanding and it's great. It's so many more people. It's so many more for our local hockey rinks, but they're spilling over. So what are we going to do for those children who are going to bed late and getting up early and not getting enough sleep because they don't have enough rinks in our community?
we're building arenas rather than talking about it, and that's what we're doing.
Well, you're rebuilding an arena, you're renovating an arena.
No,
You're not rebuilding in Port
the arena
Coquitlam.
in Port Moody was a new arena.
In Port Moody, in Port Coquitlam, it's a rebuild, so we haven't actually added any more new facilities, we're just renovating.
I agree with you. We need to continue to expand our facilities, and that's why our government has put funds forward to do that within a balanced budget and a prudent fiscal climate.
As have we.
All right. Glad we agree. Okay. We're actually going to go back to, I skipped question 3, so that is my mistake. This is from the city of Port Coquitlam, and this is about fighting for local government and recognition of local government. As everyone can agree, the services that local government provides us are vital to us as citizens, our city, our province, and our country. However, local government is the only level of government that is not recognized in the Constitution of Canada. The federal government, the provinces, and First Nations are recognized. Will you commit to introducing changes to the Constitution to recognize local government? Ron McKinnon, we'll start with you.
Well, that's a big ugly question. I would say no. I think that municipal governments are creatures of the province. They fall under provincial jurisdiction. And I think it's something we could talk about going forward, but I think that we have much better things. If we're going to be talking about constitutional changes, I think there are much better things to be spending our time on. Situations such as addressing the role of the Senate, situations such as addressing the role of the Prime Minister in appointing senators and things of that kind. I personally have a particular aversion to the notwithstanding clause in the Constitution. I'd like to get rid of that. Making local governments an entity under the Constitution, I think, is certainly in my radar is way down the list. But you know, I could be convinced otherwise if there's a really good argument. But I do recognize local governments are sitting right here.
Thank you, Ron. Next up, Louis Dolby.
Yeah, I actually would be in favor of that if at the same time, if we're going to open up the Constitution, we could abolish the Senate. That's about the only thing I agree with the NDP about. And I think the city governments are actually the most legitimate governments because you don't have to live in the city. You can move out to the country. So, but no matter where you live in Canada, you're always in a province or you're in the country. Even if you go to the northern tip of Baffin Island, you still have to pay for the CBC. You can't smoke marijuana. Not that I would want to, but some people like it. And so all the rules are imposed on you without your voluntary consent. And so it's not right from an individual freedom point of view. And but so I've never heard that before, that the cities weren't in the Constitution, but I see no problem with it. I'd like to have cities that have different types, like libertarian cities and hardcore Marxist-Leninist cities. And so you have a variety of different types.
Thank you very much, Louis. All right, Brad, the floor is yours.
I'd like there to be unicorn cities. The Green Party sees that as a real problem, that communities are not included. And what we've talked about, Elizabeth May and the Green Party has talked about, is having a council of Canadian a council of Canadian governments that would be inclusive. It would build on the First Minister's meetings, which the Harper government has completely decided to abandon. We would like to see the federal government, the provincial government, municipalities, and First Nations people come together in a government where we talk out our issues and we solve a lot of these problems that we have. in terms of funding our community so that we can have more arenas when we need them or other things. So I think that would be an excellent answer to this. I think we'd even allow unicorn cities to come in and have something to do with that too.
And if you're on Twitter, feel free to use the hashtag unicorncities. Thomas Horn.
I think that cities are a very important part of our governmental system, and quite frankly, the most close to our citizens. They're the ones that provide many of the services. Dimitri Avramopoulos is currently the head of settlement for the European Union, was the mayor of Athens, and a very close personal friend of mine. And when he was mayor of Athens, he created an organization that basically was a diplomatic unit for cities, to bring cities closer together. And one of the things that he said was, if cities had diplomacy, then we'd have less wars, because of course cities are much closer to the people. That being said, and while I really think that cities play a huge role in our lives and a huge role in the governance of our province and our country, like others, I don't believe that opening the Constitution at this point is a prudent thing to move forward with. We need the approval of all of the provinces. I too would like to change the Senate, but I recognize that without Ontario and Quebec's approval, that won't happen.
Thank you very much, Douglas. And finally, to speak on this is Sarah Norman.
So we have a government currently that hands down a lot of responsibility for a lot of things to municipalities. And municipalities only get 8 cents out of every tax dollar we spend. So a lot of responsibility is being put on their shoulders. Part of the solution to that is a federal government who is going to be a strong partner. And I've said it before, and I think it is incredibly important. We have to listen to municipalities. You know, they deal with everything from transit to affordable housing, to jobs, to roads and bridges. So we have to make them a priority, and we have to listen to what they want in government.
Thank you, Sarah. We've gotten a note from our organizers for tonight's event, and we have talked about infrastructure, we've talked about environment, we've talked about recognizing local government and parks and recreation. In an effort to try to get to as many topics as possible, we are going to forego the open discussion for this, and we're going to change the time limit for the responses. So the time that you have is 30 seconds to respond, and we will open up the floor to a maximum of 2 minutes for each discussion. So question number 5 is about the downloading of responsibilities, and this was put forth from the City of Coquitlam and City of Port Coquitlam. Federal governments make policy decisions that affect local governments. For example, changes to drinking water regulations cost this region over $1 billion, with almost no funding coming from the federal government. What would you do to support municipalities in facing this issue? Sarah, I'm going to start with you.
So I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record because I kind of addressed this a little bit in my last statement. But again, federal government, our infrastructure plan to put more of the tax we're already paying back into the community is important for this reason exactly. We have to be a partner. I can't stress that enough. We have to listen to municipalities, city councilors, and mayors and exactly what they need.
Thank you. Douglas Horn.
Well, I agree with Sarah on this. I think it's very, very important that we all work together. It's one of the things I said at the very beginning, and that is that basically the citizens that we all represent expect us all to work together to ensure that we have the services that they need and deserve. You know, I think one of the things that James Moore did very well was had a very strong working relationship with Mayor Moore and with Mayor Stewart, who are both here tonight, as well as the councils, and spent great deals of time talking to them about their priorities, talking to them about what's important for the local communities, and I intend to continue that if I'm elected.
Thank you. Louis Dalby, floor is yours.
Yeah, you mentioned that the cities get 8% of the tax dollar. That means 92% goes to Victoria and Ottawa. So that's really what the problem is. Which 92% of our money is leaving, and then we have to cry and try and get some of that money back. So it's the system should. I'm the only one that's advocating a very minimal federal government and give more powers to the local governments. And I would just keep the federal government would be the military to protect the country, federal police force, and a court system to arbitrate disputes, and that's about it at the federal level.
Thank you, Louis. Brad Nickerson.
I think I think another way to approach this is by electing a Green MP, what you'll have is a candidate who will represent the community as opposed to what the party leader wants to do. So what we would have, is you would have a direct voice to Ottawa, somebody who would take your concerns, not bringing Ottawa's concerns and imposing them on you. So it'd be a better direction for information, I think.
Thank you, Brad. And finally, we'll wrap up with Ron McKinnon.
I agree with Brad that you need a strong MP who can speak for you to Ottawa, and the Liberal Party will do that as well. I also agree with Sarah that one of the answers to this problem of paying for obligations and responsibilities that are downloaded to the local governments from senior governments is our magic infrastructure fund. We have, the whole idea there is to work collaboratively and cooperatively in partnership with the various levels of government so that the money flows where it's needed, so it can help offset those onerous obligations that we impose upon you.
Thank you, Ron. So with that, we're going to start once again with Sarah with the open discussion on this topic.
Well, where do we start with this? You know, we have seen a government that has sort of washed its hands of responsibility. It's come to the table for some things, but a lot of things haven't happened. And so we need to do better as a federal government.
Well, I think that, you know, as I listed the projects that the federal government has been involved in here locally, as I say, the local infrastructure and the local investment that our federal government has made over the last 6 years is impressive. The Evergreen Line, the Broadway Connector, the Hyde Street Center, the Percy Norman Stadium that we talked about. You know, there's many projects that we work together with local municipalities. We have to continue to do that. We have to continue to have a strong voice. We have to continue to make certain that, you know, our local concerns are heard in Ottawa, and that basically we are getting the things that we need. In transit, you know, one of the big issues up as we build out Burke Mountain is transportation, is schools. One of the things that I did for schools, which is very important, is put together a plan to build 5 brand new schools up there. After a long time of government sort of pointing fingers at each other, we now have a solid plan for Burke Mountain to build 5 schools on 4 sites. We've acquired the 4 sites, and we're working well together. And this is the whole thing. It's about governments working together to ensure that those things that the citizens need are there for the long run.
Okay, we'll wrap that. Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
The thing about those Burke Mountain schools is that for a long time, parents have been calling for them. They've been crying out for these schools, and government did not come to the table. Provincial government didn't, neither did federal.
That's just not true at all.
The parents I'm talking to on Burke Mountain are very upset.
Yes, well, and the difficulty is the school board had the schools up Burke Mountain as the number 17th priority in 2012-2013. It was their number 17th priority. We moved it from their number 17th priority to their number 1 priority in 2 budget cycles. That's governments working together and making certain that the things they needed for communities are there.
All right, let's move on to disaster preparedness. And this question was put forth by the Tri-City News. In the light of the tragedy at Lac Mégantic, how would you establish an independently run first response team paid for by shippers of hazardous goods to support national disaster relief? For that, we will start with Louis Dalby.
First of all, I'd like to point out that the disaster in Lac Mégantic, you know, it was a railroad. So with the Greens and the NDP, they're not in favor of pipelines, and so that means that the oil is going to be shipped by trains, and there's way more accidents with trains. It's way more dangerous. So I would advocate for the pipelines to so we can get our product to the product around the world and for export. And but sure, it's good to plan for a disaster, but the pipelines are actually extremely safe. She's got the right sign.
Thank you. All right, Sarah.
So the NDP has been calling for increased inspections of rail safety for a very long time. In the wake of Lac Mégantic, they renewed those calls. Nothing's happened. We had a spill in Burnaby, actually, when a train car tipped over into a environmentally sensitive area. So we need a government that's going to come to the table. It's going to put those actual safety regulations into effect and is going to inspect our rail safety and create a plan that addresses the safety as well.
Thank you, Douglas Horn. Let's hear your thoughts.
Well, government this year after that disaster has actually put in new regulations and conditions when it comes to the transport of oil and the cars that they're transported in. The railways are currently moving forward with that plan, and I think that that's one of the most important things. When it comes to disaster relief, I think this is some of the topic that we've gone over and over as we've gone through tonight, and that is the levels of government working together. One of the biggest problems that we face when we have disasters is different levels of government and different agencies within government not working well together. I think we need to work very hard to make certain that levels of government and different agencies work well, and so that basically the disaster relief fund that's there in the end is there, but basically we need to clean it up as quickly as possible and have people working together to do that.
Nice. Thank you. Ron McKinnon, let's hear your thoughts on this.
I think that for a general disaster recovery facility, I agree with Doug. We certainly have to work together. We have to have a process that works together with all levels of government. I suspect that this should be probably an adjunct to the military. They have the ability to move equipment and men and materials all over the country on an ongoing basis. But it certainly should be tied into provincial response teams as well.
Thank you, Ron. Brad Nicholson.
Ron has reminded me that, yes, the Green Party sees the military as being a far better use, as being a peacekeeping unit and being used for disaster relief and things like that. We will also work to invest in our railroads to make them safer, but the biggest thing that we have with regards to keeping our community safe from exploding oil trains is let's just make a transition right now to renewable sources of energy for our country. Let's make that.
Bruce, you've got your hand up, which is good because you will be starting the open debate again on the topic of disaster preparedness.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's pretty unrealistic to phase out oil and natural gas immediately. It's actually, why don't you try get David Suzuki and Al Gore and all the green eco types, and try and build a community and see how it works out. Where there's zero oil.
This is what I'm doing here right now, trying to build a community that is interested in a sustainable future for all of our children, all the way there.
Yeah, but
That's what this is. This is a community and how it works. We made a decision a long time ago not to be libertarian. We made a decision to come together as communities
that's
and
the
share
problem.
our resources. So
You
that we
made
can
a
have good
decision.
things.
You imposed it on people that don't want it. So you're really an intolerant, ignorant bunch. You want to impose your will. That's the trouble with democracy. I was going to get to that later, but democracy is morally flawed because we had slavery under democracy. We had Hitler was elected democratically. We had the First Nation people rounded up, sent to reservations, and they went to residential schools. The Japanese Canadians were sent to internment camps. There's so many.
If I can go back to your point, though, this is a transition. It's a transition. It's not like tomorrow we're going to stop. We're going to work towards a sustainable future for everyone. And it's already possible to do it. The technology is there. Oil is actually dead right now. It's going down.
Oil is going to be around for at least 30 years.
For 30 years, and that's fine. We'll transition until 2050, at which point we can get rid of it completely. But we have to start now, because
We
the
started
planet
a long
is in
time
danger.
ago. The average car now emits the pollution of a car from the 1970s is equivalent to 30 brand new cars. And there's a lot of electric cars. This technology is driving it, and the libertarians would increase the technology. It's the most prosperous system that's ever devised. And
Thank you very much. Any thoughts on that? I would really like to hear what Volkswagen has to say about this. Question number 7 here tonight in the All Candidates debate is about homelessness and affordable housing. It's been put forth by the Tri-City Tri-Cities Homelessness Task Force. There's a serious shortage of secure and affordable rental housing. Since 1995, the federal government has not provided any incentives, financial or taxation, for creation of new affordable rental housing. Municipalities have had to step in and assume some of that burden. Question is, what measures would your government take to restore the federal government's role in a new national program of incentives for the construction of affordable rental housing, and what would those incentives be? Douglas Horn, let's hear your party's thoughts.
Well, I think that homelessness and housing are huge issues within the Tri-Cities, and affordability for families. I think it goes to the crux of sort of where we're all going and how we're all going to move forward. You know, one of the things that it's so difficult for families is to afford a home. You know, at one time, Coquitlam was a cheap place to be able to live compared to Vancouver. Now it's become very, very expensive, and people are moving out even further. You know, it's programs like being able to move money out of your RSP to fund your first home, and many other programs, I think low taxes and those types of things for families that really help in that, but it's certainly only the beginning of the problem, and I've got a red light, so I'm going to stop there.
Brad?
The Green Party believes in a national would implement a national housing strategy, and further, what we want to do is create a guaranteed livable income for everyone, so no one has to feel the pressure and what I would say, the horror of living as a homeless person. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. Ron McKinnon.
The Liberal Party certainly wants to resume the federal leadership role in national housing. As part of our social infrastructure fund, we want to fund affordable housing initiatives, social housing initiatives, and development of senior facilities. In particular, one of the things that we were planning to do is to rebate the 100% of the GST on capital investments in new rental housing. That will stimulate the rental housing market.
Thank you. Sarah Norman?
So as the only candidate in her 30s, no offense, this is a subject that's really close to me because my friends and my family deal with this every single day. They're graduating from university and they're not able to find affordable rental housing. The Harper government has emptied funding for co-ops, which means that affordable housing source is dwindling. And my friends who have been able to buy houses, they've saved for 10 years, and as soon as they get in the house, they're at risk of losing their house because interest rates. You know, if they go up at all, they're living beyond their means and they're going to lose their house. So we really need more affordable housing.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And let's wrap up with Lewis Dalby.
Well, I'm probably the only one on the state that has any experience with homeless people. I've actually housed 3 or 4 of them, and believe me, it's a real challenge. They got addiction problems. Most of them are alcoholics, and some of them are criminals. I had 2 of them. I had a heck of a time getting rid of them. I got some acreage, but it's a challenge.
I think we need to be a little bit careful about generalizing here.
I've had experience with them, and part of the reason why they do have a lot of addiction problems. If you don't realize that, you don't know much about homeless people.
First of all.
Thank you very much. I'm being told, I'm being told that we do have time for a debate on this, so let's, since it's already started, sure, let's make room for it. Douglas Horn, do you want to start this?
Sure, I'll start it off. You know, I think going into the homelessness issue, I think one of the things, you know, we have some incredible organizations here in the Tri-Cities, like the Hope for Freedom Society, that really does do great work in our community when it comes to addictions and those types of things. They've run the Weather Map program, you know, absolutely fantastic service to our community for many, many years. The federal government and our provincial government have come together now. We're building 3030 Gordon, which is both housing for homeless as well as housing, transitional housing for those that are moving forward with additional options. It's providing support to these people. It's making certain that they have the supports that they need. One of the things that's not just about housing is, as I wouldn't say as Lewis has just said, but it's not about the housing, It's about the supports that they need as well. It's about all of the other issues, the mental health issues, the addiction issues. It's all of those things that are compounded together that we need to address. You know, it was interesting. I was sitting at a conference in Colorado recently at a homeless. Well, the point is that we need to make certain that we have these types of facilities, that basically we have these things, that government provides these things.
So are you saying,
it's not about,
I'm sorry,
on the homeless side, it's not about housing. It's about basically providing these supports. Housing is part of that.
Are you
but
saying
not
the
whole
federal
solution.
government the Conservative government has provided these supports by gutting veterans programs?
We
So
haven't done-
veterans coming
That's just
home
not true.
with
That's just not
PTSD can't
true.
even
We're
access
spending
service
more money on
centers in
veterans
their
than we ever
communities?
have. More money on veterans than ever been spent, sir. That's simply not true. You can't make it up as you go along. You're no longer in the media, all right?
You closed centers across the country, which means a lot of veterans don't have anywhere to go. They have
And that's,
nowhere to go to get
and
the
that's
supports
why
they
we
need.
have a number of transitional things. You know, Tim
You
Laidler,
also-
who is the candidate in the other riding, was the head of Veterans Transition Services. There are many veterans supporting the
And
Conservative
how-
Party, and that's because veterans know that basically there are a lot of programs in place and that we
I'm
give
sorry,
veterans more of a
veterans
choice
came
than
out
we've ever had.
against the Harper government because of the cuts that were made,
There-
because of the
we
lack of
we are
funding,
at record
and because of
funding
the service
for
centers.
veterans. That is the fact. That is the fact. Record funding for
That's
veterans.
just not true.
Question number 8. Post-secondary education. Just a quick poll for those of you who showed up here tonight at the Cherry Fox Theater. How many of you have kids or are actually in post-secondary right now? That's just, okay, so this is a very important topic for quite a lot of people here. So this has actually been put forth by 2 students from Riverside Secondary. Farson and Andrew, are you here? Yeah, right back there. Okay. You guys put this question together, so let's ask it. In an effort to try to stimulate the economy for the next 5 years, how does your party plan on investing in their generation, so we're talking 17 to 24-year-olds, post-secondary opportunities so that they can become contributing members to society? Ron?
Part of our social infrastructure initiatives will be funding for training initiatives, such as increased funding for co-op ventures where there are more co-op spaces created that students can work and go to school and get out of school with some experience. There's also going to be more training facilities through EI, and 30 seconds isn't long enough.
Thank you very much. Ron, let's move to Louis Dalton.
Okay, I forgot what the question was.
It's right behind you there. Post-secondary education. What's
Oh,
your
right.
party's going to be doing?
Okay, well, education, there's no reason why it necessarily has to be funded by the government. What about private schools? What about homeschooling? You know, what's fundamentally wrong? Like, for those people that want to have government-run schools, I want them to have their socialist-run schools. But what about the people that do homeschooling? They got to pay twice for their taxes for the public school system, and then they got to pay for their own school system. It's not really fair.
Okay. Brad, your thoughts?
The Green Party's plan is to eliminate tuition by 2012. At this point, we'd like to immediately, with a Green Party...
2012?
Sorry. 2020. I apologize. Thank you for helping me out. I was a little excited there.
To the time machine.
Sorry. And one of the difficulties that we have is the crushing student debt. So what we would like to do is also cap it at $10,000 for any debt that exists now, and to put an end to that and interest on those debts.
Thank you. Douglas Torn, how do you feel about the post-secondary education plan?
I think it's extremely important, especially as I was talking to a group of seniors earlier today, and we talked about the fact that there will be many people transitioning out of the workforce and many people that we need to fill those positions. Our government has increased funding to the youth employment strategy by over $330 million annually. And we've also worked on things like the Future Entrepreneurs Program, where we're investing $14 million a year It's things like this that basically make it so that young people can have the advantage that they need. As well, trades training is extremely important. It's something that the levels of government need to work together on to make certain is there, because those are the types of jobs we need for the future.
Thank you, Douglas. Sarah Norman, let's wrap up with you.
So, under the Conservative government, student debt has ballooned to over $23 billion. The average student graduates with over $26,000 in debt. I know a lot of my friends and family are going through this. They come out of school and they don't have any jobs, and it's hard to find a job. The NDP plan, first of all, they're going to crack down on unpaid internships. Second of all, they're going to make sure we get 40,000 youth connected with paid internships so they can learn on the job. And third, we're going to make education much more accessible and affordable.
Thank you very much. As you can hear from the crowd here tonight, this is a very hot topic to debate. And it's something that was in the news today was the fact that the first time in our history, the people who are aged 60 and over now outnumber the people who are 14 and under. So the idea of investing in the future generations of those who live here in Coquitlam and Port Coquitlam in this riding is a very important one. Let's open up the debate and start once again with Ron McKinnon.
What are we talking about?
Post-secondary.
Sorry, I was zoned out here. It's the heat, I think. We have some things coming down the pike. I'm told about this that haven't been formally announced, but I believe that they're going to be about reducing student loan debt. But I can't promise anything about that. I do think it's very important that the federal government be involved at this point. I think that leadership was established back in the 60s by Mr. Pearson at the behest of the NDP, no doubt, in his minority government to introduce the student loan program in the first place. It's a very powerful thing to help people who cannot themselves pay for education to get into the program. I would like to see something like Brad has mentioned, depending on what the budgets look like, to be able to reduce tuitions entirely. But that's me. That's not a party position.
So, the NDP has actually, we already tabled the Post-Secondary Education Act, which would ensure adequate and stable funding in the form of grants for students.
With actually what Sarah had said earlier, our government has actually increased the number by 5,000 of the paid internship programs for post-secondary graduates. We've also confirmed the Pathways to Education Canada program, and also from the scientific standpoint, added an additional 1,000 internships in 2014-2015 through the National Research Council's Industrial Research Program for innovative and small and medium-sized businesses. It's these types of paid internships programs that are very important, and I would agree with Sarah, but that's why we're actually doing it and have done it already.
And the Conservatives have also refused to protect interns from exploitation, sexual harassment, and unreasonable hours of work.
That's not true.
Yes,
That's
it is
not
true.
Thank you for your thoughts on that. You know, this is, again, kind of tied in with what we had talked about earlier with the, affordability. And with the post-secondary education, for those of you in your crowd, in the crowd that did put your hand up, you know that when you graduate with a ton of student debt, it also rolls into your ability to buy a place, buy a home. And with that also ties into how many arenas you have as more people move out to smaller cities outside of Vancouver. I don't want to say Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam are smaller cities, but in the scheme of things. So the common themes, they all really tie in here together. We want to move on to the First Nations here. And what the question is here is, how do you feel you can best represent the interests and issues of your Aboriginal constituents, in particular, the Coquitlam First Nation? So, for that, let's start with Louis Dolly.
Okay, so I would leave them alone. We've interfered with their life. We've stolen their property. We've put them on small reservations, very tiny compared to what they had before. We denied them the right to vote. We sent their kids to residential schools against the parents' will. So this is what democracy does. And so I would leave them alone. I would eventually shut down the Department of Indian Affairs. I think it's $13 billion a year. Just like gradually phase it out, and the First Nation people should be compensated during the transitional stage, and probably they deserve a lot more property.
Thank you. For your thoughts, we've got Sarah Norman.
So first of all, I'm pretty ashamed of the Conservative government for not coming to the table and agreeing to an inquiry into the 1,200 missing and murdered Aboriginal women. The NDP will do that within the first 100 days of taking office, and we will take a nation-to-nation approach.
Let's hear from Douglas Horn.
Sure. I'll start by saying there have been more than 40 studies into the missing and murdered Aboriginal women. I think what we need to do is take action, not have more studies. I think it's important to have strong relationships with our First Nations. Ron Ginsberg, who's their local chief, and I have spent a lot of time talking and understanding the local issues. I think those types of things are very important. It's important to have these types of dialogues. It's important to make certain that we understand what it is that they need. Our government has moved forward since 2006 and increased health funding by more than 31% for Aboriginal peoples, has dealt with housing issues for Aboriginal peoples and other things like that. And it's those things that improve their life. We need to continue to do that.
Thank you. Let's hear from Ron McKinnon tonight.
I think the Coquitlam First Nation is among many of the First Nations doing very well. They've got a fairly residential reserve. They're doing some commercial development, and they stand to do reasonably well for themselves. There are many bands around the nation like that who are doing well, who have good management and good training, but the First Nations as a class are the highest poverty in the country, and we want to restore the provisions of the Kelowna Accord and provide proper education outcomes for them.
Thank you, Ron. We unfortunately don't have time to debate this particular topic, but we do want to hear from Brad Nicholson.
The Green Party would partner with First Nations. We would build respect through nation-to-nation process. We'd partner for responsible resource development with the First Nations people, because what we're doing as a nation is robbing them of the resources that they could help to take care of themselves. We need to recognize their inherent rights and title. We need to get rid of the Indian Act and be inclusive in Canada, include them in the Council of Canadian Governments, implement the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and as Sarah said, launch the Missing Women Inquiry right away.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, candidates, for your thoughts. First Nations, let's move to domestic violence. Tri-City Transitions would like to ask this question. Domestic violence and its impacts are a significant cost to the economy. This sharply contrasts how economic issues are discussed in mainstream political debates. If you are elected, what new initiatives or commitments would be created by your party to reduce and mitigate domestic violence?
So, as many people probably know, the NDP tabled a motion to have a strategy nationally, federally, to end violence against women, and the Conservative government voted against that. The NDP, of course, has been incredibly, one of the reasons I joined the NDP is because they are very much keeping women and women's issues at the forefront, more so than I would say any other party, and I'm sure other people will disagree with me, but we have more women candidates than any other party in this federal election, and that means issues like this are going to come up a lot more.
Thank you, Sarah. Douglas Horn.
I've spent a lot of time and been very supportive of Tri-Cities Transitions, and Carol Metz-Murray is someone that I hold in high regard. I think that the work that they do locally here is exceptional and something that we all need to support. We have to continue to work together to make certain that violence against women is is dealt with, as well as bullying and other issues against individuals. It's these types of things that really make our communities unsafe and make people feel unsafe. And it's those types of things as we continue that we need to make certain that we put an end to.
Thank you. Louis Dalby.
How to mitigate violence against women? Well, there's basically you can charge them and send them to jail. But I mean, what else can you do? There's also a lot of violence against men. It's just you don't hear about it as often. It's sort of kind of embarrassing for men, and usually it's the attacks aren't quite as nasty. So usually the man is removed from the home. And but I'm definitely in favor of putting criminals in jail for a long period of time.
Thank you, Louis. Brad Nicholson.
I'd like to, violence against women is quite often a situation where a woman can't leave a home. They have no options. The Green Party is looking at a guaranteed minimum income so that women would have the means to flee. We are also looking at a housing strategy so they have a place to go. We are also looking at I'm sorry, that's what I have.
Thank you, Brad. And Ron McKinnon, let's conclude with you.
This is such a large and serious problem. It's impossible to deal with probably in 30 seconds. There's so many causes for violence against women. There's mental illness, there's alcoholism, there's poverty, there's despair, there's being trapped with no place to go. These problems have to be dealt with on a wide variety of ways, from more mental health support to providing more outreach services and places for battered women to be able to escape.
Thank you, Ron. I asked earlier the people here in the audience who are affected by some of the post-secondary challenges that are out there. I'd like to find out at this point how many would identify as a senior citizen in this crowd here tonight. Okay. This question will speak to you. Seniors Issues. And the organization that has asked this question is the Wilson Center Seniors Advisory Association. All levels of government are faced with an increasing elderly population. Grants are available to support new initiatives, but funding is lacking to support the operation of existing organizations. This is a significant flaw in well-intentioned granting programs and has resulted in the closure of needed programs for seniors. For example, the closure of the Community Volunteer Services for Seniors that's been operating for 17 years here in our community. How will your party handle this situation if elected? Brad Nicholson, we start with you.
For seniors, the Green Party offers a national strategy for seniors. Affordable and predictable home care support, a pharmacare plan that would save our country $11 billion a year, national dementia strategy, safe public transport, and door-to-door mail delivery.
Okay, thank you. Ron McKinnon.
There's a number of areas where we would like to act in this in assistance of senior citizens, lowering the qualification age for GIS and OAS back down to 65, indexing these to a new seniors index, price index, since seniors tend to spend money differently than non-seniors, and to use whichever is the best, whether the consumer price index or the seniors price index. There's also providing in the social infrastructure fund funding for seniors facilities and operating for them.
Thank you, Ron. Sarah Norman.
So the NDP has a very large and very good plan that's really going to address this. First, it's home care. So a lot of hospital beds are taken by seniors who don't have home care. We're going to free up those hospital beds by making sure it's home care for an additional 41,000 seniors. We want to help provinces build more nursing care home beds. And we want to improve access to end-of-life care for Canadians and their loved ones.
Thank you, Sarah. Lewis Dolby.
Yeah, so I don't really think it's the federal government should be sending money to seniors groups. It should be a local issue, local organizations. The seniors, they're the wealthiest generation in Canada ever. And I think the young people in the crowd, they should get a hold of a book called Generation Screwed. It's the millennial generation, and it's our generation, the baby boomer generation, that's been borrowing and borrowing, and we're living beyond our means right now. And so to add, like all these other candidates who want to add a lot of free stuff, but not me.
And Douglas Horn.
Well, I think seniors is a huge issue, and as I said, the population is aging, so it's a huge demographic that we're dealing with. The Conservative government has had the largest increase in the guaranteed income supplement is 25 years. We've also increased the maximum GIS earnings exemption to $3,500. I think one of the things that differentiates us between the other two parties as well is tax-free savings accounts. We see those as very, very important for average Canadians to be able to save for their retirement. We've also made it so that you can put money into your RSP until you're 71 years old, and make it so that you can't have to take all of your money out of your RIF when you're 75, which I think is very, very important, as people are much older than 75 now today.
Thank you very much. It is quite a positive thing that we're living a lot longer, but it is also creating a lot of complications that perhaps previous governments have not actually forecast. So good discussion with that. We did also have on the agenda to speak to fisheries and sports. Unfortunately, due to time, with our lively debates here tonight, we don't have time to discuss this on the stage, but we do invite you to ask these candidates your thoughts if these are issues that pertain to you. So we will do closing remarks from each of the candidates. We also will bring back Mayor Moore back into the stage for the final question. Shall we begin with the closing remarks?
Yes.
Okay, let's do the closing remarks. And let us begin with Lewis Dolby, please. How much time do we have? I believe it is 1 minute for closing remarks.
Okay.
We want 2 minutes still? Okay, 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so, it's sort of a hostile crowd here. I'm in favor of people having their socialist paradise, okay? And all I'm trying to get is just an enclave of liberty somewhere in Canada, and I don't think that's really too much to ask. But the intolerant socialists, they want to impose their will on us. They want to restrict our freedom. They want to raise taxes and have free daycare, free university education, all these free programs. And, we're at the level of, the government takes 42% of our income right now. And it's going to go higher and higher. And, the libertarian philosophy, it's based on the non-aggression principle. So every person on the planet is entitled to live their life the way they choose, free from interference from other people, including governments. And so there's really only two ways to conduct human interaction. There's the civilized libertarian way, and then there's of peaceful non-violence, non-coercion. Then there's the coercive, violent way, which is the barbaric way that most of the people in this room would advocate. They don't realize it, but everything the government does is backed up by force. Just the simplest thing, like somebody wanting to smoke marijuana or having a glass of wine, which we used to have prohibition of, or minimum wage laws, or they want to send their kids to a school. Some countries it's outlawed. So I would just urge you to think that, try and be a little bit tolerant and allow people the freedom to choose the government that they would like to live under. We all have different ideas. Everybody in here has a vision of how they'd like to live. And I'm the only one that's saying, well, why not keep like-minded people together in different areas and, have different provinces, make it facilitate the system so that we can have a diversity of different political stripes.
Thank you, Lewis, for your closing remarks. Douglas Horn?
Great, well, thank you, Kim. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I think that we've had a good discussion of many of the issues that face us all within the community. I very proudly represented half of this community in the provincial legislature for the past 6 years, and I really do look forward to an opportunity to represent this community in Ottawa. I think that it's important, and we have a very important decision ahead of us on October the 19th. We have, a very, very strong and sound fiscal policy here in Canada. We've outperformed the G7 when it comes to economic growth. We have a balanced budget. In our first quarter, we actually had a $5 billion surplus. It's these type of things that are very, very important to Canadians to make certain that we move forward on strong economic footing. It's these types of things that make certain that we can pay for the social services and all of those things that we've been talking about today, that make certain that we have the money to be able to fund those programs. It's by building the economy, it's by making the economy stronger that we allow to have those programs. Both the Liberals and the NDP have put forward major tax increases, both on the payroll side as well as potential tax increases across the board. The NDP basically have put forward a plan that they haven't actually costed $8 billion of. So where they're actually coming up for the money for that $8 billion is all really a question at this point. It's a question that each of you should ask yourself. Where exactly are they coming up with the money? And exactly, if you take a look and go back 10 years in British Columbia's history, we know what happened. British Columbia went from being economically sound to being a have-not province under an NDP government. Canada can't afford that. Canada doesn't want to have that happen. And that's why we need to make certain that we move forward with the strong fiscal management that Stephen Harper and the Conservative government have been providing for the past 6 years. I hope that on October the 19th that I can count on your support, and I look forward to representing you in Ottawa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dennis. Ron McKinnon.
I hear friends and neighbors who tell me they're concerned about our Canada. They worry about loss of livelihood, burdens on our healthcare system, serious risks to our environment, and a lack of affordable housing. Fortunately, the Liberal Party has a plan to deal with this, a vision that I share, and I'm happy to promote and work for. It's fundamentally a three-point plan, which is to grow our economy by investing in it at a time when interest rates were low and our debt to GDP ratio is very good. We can invigorate this economy and get it running on all 8 cylinders. Secondly, we're going to lower taxes for the middle class to help them thrive and get ahead at the cost of asking the 1% higher income people to pay a little more. My apologies to the higher income people, but you can afford it. We're going to help those who want to join the middle class by supporting and encouraging sustainable housing, social housing, affordable housing, more rental housing, help to raise your children with a tax-free Canada Child Credit, and I had another really important point there, but you're going to have to take my word for it. It's really hard to communicate the vastness of our vision and our plan in 30-second snippets. So I really do encourage you all to go to realchange.ca or ronmckinnon.liberal.ca and find out more about me and our platform. It's worth the trip, and I thank you for your time. I thank the city for putting this on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron McKinnon. Brad Nicholson, let's hear your final thoughts.
I would agree. I think that I would agree with Ron. I think that it's really valuable for you to all take the time to look at all the platforms. I think that on this side of the stage that there's quite an agreement. I think that all of these 3 parties are looking at what's going on in Canada, and people are really feeling some difficulty based on the policies that we felt in the government in the last 10 years. There are people that are really being hurt. And it's really important to look at these policies and make a really good decision. I would say that the difference between our platforms is simply probably the approach to how our government, our MPs want to represent you. That's a very important thing. So look at that. But another big thing that we really haven't gotten into is the environmental issues that are going on. We haven't really gone into how drastic that is on a global stage. And I want to express how much I think it's important for us to really consider going towards new technologies and the opportunities that those provide all of us. We can go to a much more sustainable future and build our communities together in a way that will be for all of our children's futures. That's what I'm here today, to look after my kids, the kids that I've coached for years, your kids. I'm really hoping that they will have a future, but we need to start immediately. We don't have any more time to wait. I think that's what might be another little bit of a difference between our parties. We want to start now, and we're seeing delays from all the other parties. So I would like you to consider that, look at the platforms, and I look forward to your support on October 19th. Did I get the date right that time?
Thank you, Brad. Sarah Norman.
So thank you all for coming tonight. Families in this community deserve to have an MP who has an open door and is ready to work for the people. An NDP government led by Tom Mulcair will prioritize the issues that affect us all locally. That means getting our economy working for all Canadians. We've had enough of the harbour cuts that leave basic services underfunded. The NDP will invest more into our community through infrastructure and transit upgrades. The NDP plan is to lower taxes for small business while raising big corporate taxes from 15% to 17%, not raise payroll taxes. And that will ensure our local businesses can keep more money at the end of the day. We also need to ensure that our streets are kept safe. The NDP's plan is to restart the Police Officer Recruitment Fund, a program that did fall victim to the careless cuts by the Harper government, and that will lead to more police officers keeping our cities safe. We need to think about how our community will change and plan for the future right now. The NDP is making it a priority to be a strong partner with municipalities and do this. And of course, we have to make sure that our environment is preserved for us and for our future generations, not only to maintain our way of life, so parents can take their kids hiking up Burke Mountain or along the Poco Trail, but to make sure our economy remains strong. This is the community where I grew up. This is my home. We only need to look one province over to see the actual damage the Harper economy has done. I refuse to see my neighbors struggling to get by for the next 4 years. That's why I stepped forward to run in this election. Canada is ready for change. Tom Mulcair has the plan to defeat Stephen Harper, and I hope on October 19th I can count on your support.
So we are going to bring Mayor Moore back into the stage for one final question here tonight for the candidates. We hope you'll stick around for that. How many of you feel like you know and have a better clue as to who you are going to be voting for on October 19th as of tonight? Good. How many of you feel strongly about buying one of those Citadel Heights homes that I just mentioned in the beginning? Okay, good. We have at least 7 of them. I know this seems like, again, The Hobbit. But let's please welcome once again, Mayor Moore.
Thank you very much. We do have one final question for the candidates, and this has been put forward by FCM to every candidate across this country. It's asking you to take a pledge. The pledge goes something like this. Well, it goes exactly like this. Will you make the Canadian municipalities' commitment and endorse the following municipal issues as an election issue? 1, improvements of core municipal infrastructure. 2, affordable housing. 3, police and disaster mitigation. 4, environmental, sustainable, resilient, and livable communities. And 5, global municipal connections through partnerships at home and abroad. And before I ask you to give me a yes or no answer for an online pledge, which you can go to fcm.ca to make the pledge, I'm not sure about the Libertarians actually, but every other party has had MP candidates across this country say yes to this pledge. So I ask you, and I'll start with you, Louis, will you make that pledge?
Well, it would be no, of course.
Okay, fair enough. Douglas?
I think those issues are all very, very important.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Sarah?
I support everything that you mentioned.
Excellent. So I will go online tomorrow to fcm.ca to make sure that by the end of business tomorrow that you have actually fulfilled that and signed up for that pledge. And I and everybody else will be tweeting out that you have done that, and I thank you for making that commitment to our local governments. So I do want to say thank you to all of you for coming tonight. It was a lively debate. I thank you for respecting the debate that went on. I want to thank all of you as candidates. You know, as a politician, and some of us that are here from POCO Council, Coquitlam Council, and School Board, we know what it's like to stand there. It's not easy. It is hard. It's tough to fit in those answers into quick little sound bites, especially when you have some heckling, frankly, coming on from the audience, which isn't helpful as well. But I do want to thank you for putting your name forward. This, as much as you might disagree, is democracy. This is why we love Canada, so that we can come up here and have fabulous debates, can disagree, hopefully respectfully disagree about what's going on, and then we get to choose. We get to choose who we're going to put in Ottawa and represent us here from Port Coquitlam at Ottawa. So I thank you. Good luck in the next couple weeks as you go and door knock and meet with people. Hopefully you'll stick around and chat with some people here afterwards. And finally, I want to thank Kevin. Kevin, here's a little something from the city of Port Coquitlam. So my wife Erin and I, we listen to Kevin almost every morning. Kevin and Sonia on Peak to 102.7. Excellent. It's just number 5 on our card. So, and 4, 3, 2, and 1 as well. Yeah, right. Good point. But you saw his humor tonight, but also understanding the issues. And it's the same thing listening to you in the morning. You add some levity to some very important issues through your show. So I encourage you to listen to Kevin. Good hometown boy there, doing a great job for Port Coquitlam. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you to all our candidates. Have a good evening.